a wife and a mother and an insurance agency owner, a friend, and a PTA advocate. I am so excited to talk about all of the things that I find most precious here within our community, within our lives, and within our faith, friendships, and relationships. Here on Heather's Most Precious. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Heather's Most Precious. I am so excited to introduce y'all to Todd Tribby today. And Todd, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm well. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
And I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Todd, tell us, I know you wear so many different hats. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'll start with today, and then I'll probably go back and tell you the journey of how I got here. My name is Todd Tribby. I own a cruise planners travel agency franchise, and that's how you and I met, of course,
Yes.
the B&I. And I also teach JROTC at East Hamilton High School, which is a new program that I started 3 years ago with my partner, Major Eric Redlin, and we hired a new instructor last year, Ryan Richardson.
Wow.
So those are the two hats that I wear outside of the house. But of course, my number one hat, even though my kids are grown and gone, is being a dad and a father and a husband. So I guess we should rewind the clock and kind of talk about how I got here.
Absolutely.
And I'll skip all the little stuff, but I grew up in a place called Columbus, Georgia, which is right outside of Fort Benning. I'm not a military brat. My father was in the retail business. We moved there. So I was born in Terre Haute, Indiana, moved to Georgia when I was about 5, and I was raised in Columbus, Georgia through, I should say there till I was 19, I think. So I graduated from high school in 1989. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do, tried going to college. I was not a good student in high school, was not a good student in college. So after a year of that, they disinvited me to come back.
Best way to put it.
And I wanted to join the Army. So in I guess that would be 1990, went to the Army recruiter, and we knew there was going to be a reduction in force down the pipe, and I had a knee surgery playing football in high school.
Okay.
They didn't think I would qualify to join. So they sent me anyway. I took the ASVAB, had a great test score. I told everybody I was a genius. I went back and should have told my high school teachers, and they almost fainted. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to be an infantryman. I wanted to be an armor crewman, tanker, which is what I wound up doing later in life. Something along those lines. And I had all the young man aspirations to do, be a ranger, do special forces, all those kind of yada things. So I go take the ASVAB, take the physical. The doctor looked at me. He says, "Are you interested in jumping out of airplanes?" I said, "Absolutely, sir." He put that stamp on there. They sent me down to the office. And things are different now, but I went down to find out what my job was going to be. They didn't know who I was, why I was there. There was no paperwork completed. But recruiters hadn't done that part of the deal. So now they can't come out and prey on other people's prospects, but this guy in a white uniform sat down next to me. He goes, "You got really good test scores, young man."
How?
And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You ever thought about being a nuclear reactor operator?" And I said, "Well, absolutely not. I had thought about being a rifle operator." And he kind of broke it down for me, and I didn't qualify for that program.
Okay.
I was not the greatest teenager. It had a little bit of trouble. So I did qualify for the electronics technician program, and I needed to go. I didn't have time to waste. And I was a little short, so I kind of cut my nose off to spite my face and cut the Army out of my life for a period of time. Joined the Navy, had a fabulous technical education, went on to serve on a destroyer, the USS Stump. We cleaned up after Desert Storm, did a lot of counter-narcotics enforcement in the islands down in Central and South America. Had a wonderful time, but I did not like being a maintenance technician, and I would volunteer for anything that would get me out of the repair shop. So we had this visit board, search and seize, or was embargo enforcement post-Desert Storm. We would board cargo, commercial vessels and inspect their cargo. And there was some adventure and risk there, so it was my deal. There's now a job in the Navy for that, but there was no such thing. It was, they gave us a harness, they gave us a set of coveralls and a radio, and they said, "Y'all go figure this out." So I did that for a period of time, ended up, I met my wife while I was in the Navy. We've been married for 29 years this December.
Oh, that's amazing.
It is amazing. Every day it's amazing. So we married right before I left, and I talked about going straight into the Army post-Navy. She had no experience with the military or anybody in the military. Her motto is, if I can't be the general, I don't want to play.
Like most women.
So we explored a civilian career for about 9 years. Worked a couple different. I tried being an electronics technician because I thought I should use my education. I needed to prove to myself twice that I hated doing that kind of work. And then I got into. We started selling real estate together for a period of time. I don't recommend that newly married couples work together. So she stuck with real estate. She was pregnant with our first child. I had to get a real job. Wound up with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I worked for them for a number of years. In Montgomery, Alabama, we moved down to the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, which is a fabulous place. Gulfport and Biloxi are wonderful places. And worked with them for a while. Then we started a Janiking franchise. We had 2 more children. So I have 3 children total. Okay. And with the third one, she goes, I don't want to work anymore. And I was like, I don't want to pay for daycare anymore. So we started the business to supplement her income. And that went really well. We made money, sold it at a profit, decided to start a second business. And they say 50% of all small businesses fail. The second one did not make it. And during those years, every year I would go down and talk to the Army recruiter and see what was going on in the Army. And they would say, these are all the things that are going on in the Army. I'd go home and say, honey, guess what's going on in the Army? And she goes, how much does it pay? And I was like, all right, you're right. We can't afford that. Right. But Heather, when you're broke, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
So
anything's more than nothing, right?
At age 34, I went back into the service. The War on Terror had been going on for about 2 years, which enabled me to return to service. So that was kind of a blessing. I got to do what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I was a tanker. Wow. Did a couple combat deployments as a tanker. Both of those were in Iraq and Ramadi, and then in Sadr City in 2008, 2009. That was in Germany. Went to Fort Benning, Georgia. I was supposed to be a drill sergeant at Fort Benning, Georgia. I was just talking to Courtney about the Greece trip that we're taking a group on next year. We had planned a trip to Greece when we lived in Europe, and Uncle Sugar decided I needed to be a drill sergeant. And I said, but Uncle Sugar, I've got this trip planned to Greece. And the response was, I hope you bought the insurance.
They did not care.
I went down to Fort Benning, and I was not a tier 1 athlete, but I'd always done okay on physical fitness tests. And I failed my PT test to go to drill sergeant school. So I did it was really weird. It was like out of nowhere. I just couldn't run 2 miles anymore. So I did what every other stubborn staff sergeant did. I did 2-a-days, but I got worse. And it was getting to the point where they were going to have to, you considering separation from the service because you can't meet the standards, and it's important. Right. And I was also, preventing another drill sergeant getting trained to go on and do that job, which is hard enough. You don't want to be short-staffed there. So come to find, we had moved the Armor Center that year from Fort Knox, Kentucky to Fort Benning. There was a doctor that was going to serve all of us, and there was only 13 of us there. So he said, let's just do a full physical on you. And it's kind of funny. So I drove from Martin Army Hospital back out to Harmony Church, which probably means nothing to anybody, but it's probably about a 15-minute drive. And my doctor, as I'm getting out of my car to go to my office, I get a phone call from the doctor. It never occurred to me that the doctor himself picked up the phone and called me. You've got some experience, that's never good. I didn't think about it. He goes, hey, Staff Sergeant, can you go back to the hospital? I don't think they did your blood work right. So I said, sure, no problem. Back to the hospital I go, make the drive back. My phone rings again in the parking lot as I'm going to my office. Apparently it takes those electrons that long to get as far as my car did. And then it hit me, man, this dude's called me twice. Can you come on up to the office? So I go in. And again, there's no staff there. So I'm the only guy walking in. The doctor's in his office, and everybody's almost like lined up to greet me. I was like, this is not good. So that turned into a leukemia diagnosis. I had hairy cell leukemia, which we caught. I was able to finish my entire Army career. I did have a relapse after another time, but that's a different story. But anyway, so it had a happy ending. If you got to have cancer, it's the one you want to have. Okay. It requires lifelong treatment, but we're okay. So that was the end of my drill sergeant dream. Worked a desk job while I did chemo and recovered, and they sent me up to Alaska to be a platoon sergeant. Okay. Alaska was a phenomenal place. Everybody asked, what was your favorite place? Well, the kids were teenagers. They were little in Europe, so they had a wonderful time in Europe. I was in Iraq most of the time, but we drugged the kids all over Europe. But in Alaska, they were teenagers. Your income was better. I had some more rank, some seniority, and so we really peaked. I think I peaked as a human being. The kids thrived there. The family. We have great memories of Alaska. Which is another reason why I got into the travel business, but I'll get to that. So in Alaska, I was supposed to be a platoon sergeant. There was this thing called the magical gunship, which was new. The Striker concept was pretty new then. They had a tank-ish thing it was pneumatic wheels, and it was wild. So that's what I went there for. After about a year, I got my real leadership education my last 26 months in Alaska. So my first sergeant, who is the senior NCO in a company, he wasn't, I don't want to say anything bad about Chris, but anyway, he was lacking in some regards, but he was the man, and, it's our job to make sure the team doesn't fail. So I was compensating for him in some ways, but one morning the sergeant major, who is the senior non-commissioned officer in a battalion, comes down and he goes, "Hey, Trib, I need you to keep everybody out of the building from 6:30 to 8. I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "I'll tell you later." So in came our first sergeant to pack his office up and leave. And I had the keys to the office, so I called the sergeant major. I said, "He's gone." And he goes, I said, "You mean to bring the keys to you?" And he goes, "You hold on to the keys for a little while." So I became the first sergeant of an infantry company, which was wildly different than being a tanker. So as a tanker, our platoons are 16 people. As an infantryman, it's 42 people. Similar firepower, similar job, but it's just a lot of people. So I went from expecting to be a first sergeant of 65 people to 152.
Wow.
But it was a great experience. I mean, it was probably the best unit I served in. That brigade in Alaska was. And then my guys really rose to the occasion. And we went from being just kind of the bad news bears to being one of the top competitors in the Alaska theater. So we won the Arctic Winter Games several years in a row. I didn't do any of that. I just let leaders lead. And that's where I really learned to just let leaders lead. Give them some course corrections where they got to do it. We were supposed to deploy to Afghanistan from there. I think we could have ended the war with that brigade, but they didn't. That was the years of sequestration, so that got canceled. And it just became a great experience to train. For me, I broadened my skill set. And then from there, I moved on to teach senior ROTC in college, which was another leadership education. So I went from being tactical, aggressive leader to training people that would one day be my boss. We were going to commission those second lieutenants. I discovered there that I was good in education, so I finally, on the 29-year plan, finished my college degree. I started 2 master's programs, and then that was enough of that. So I didn't quite complete those because there wasn't a reason to. There was no interest there. And then we decided to retire at age 50. So I left the service, and I always wanted to do my own business. Well, I did when I was younger, and that's what I wanted to do when I retired. We lived in New York State, loved Buffalo, New York, phenomenal place. However, the tax policies are made down in Albany in favor of New York City, and that's, it's an 8-hour distance between those two places, so very unrelated. And we decided that we would leave New York. I would take so I started looking for JROTC jobs here in the southeastern U.S. This was home, family's close by. And we came down to Chattanooga, and we really fell in love with Chattanooga. I came down for an interview. We stayed on the south side of Chattanooga. The next morning, as I'm leaving for the interview, my wife's words of encouragement, "You better get this job."
She had already fallen in love.
So we did. It was between Bradley County and here. Both offered me a position. We chose Chattanooga, and that turned into starting the JROTC department down the road at East Hamilton.
That's great.
And that's how I got here.
That is awesome. Lots to unpack there. I know that you sound like you have been created kind of for this education, the educational piece of it, and teaching. Do you miss dealing with adults, or are you grateful to be in the classroom with students?
I love the kids. I really enjoy working with the kids. One day I'll have to stop doing that, and I'll miss the kids. Right. Did I mention how much I like the kids? That's
one more time.
Yeah. So that's really my love there. I thought that it would also be good for me. I didn't think about some things. So especially when you retire from a senior leadership position, you lose all your social status. So at age, at age 50, I was the man. It was no big deal for me to give recommendations, advice to 2 and 3 star generals. I mean, I didn't run in those circles, but that's the level I worked at. So that comes with some social status. And when I came here, I was a new teacher, and there's no social status there. So that was hard. And I thought I thought it would make it easier coming in to work in that, but I miss the camaraderie. I have no great affinity for the institution of the United States Army, but I miss the wonderful people that I worked with, and they were truly, truly the best of us.
Yeah. Do you still have friendships? Do you still communicate with some of the people that you have served with, or? I
do. So especially my platoon from my second deployment, that was pretty violent. 15 months. And I keep up with a lot of those men. And they've gone on to do great things. One's a lieutenant on the Haverhill is a suburb of Boston's fire department. One became a lawyer. One's a master mason, brick mason. The list goes on, but.
That's amazing. And all doing such various things. Did a lot of them stay, or are they pretty spread out?
No, most actually did not stay. Of that group, I think 2 of us stayed in the service.
Yeah. How do you, after you have served, and you're talking about the violent, and I can only imagine being over there. How is that coming back, and are there resources? Do you feel like there were resources to help?
I think there's lots of resources. There's a lot of good resources. There's a lot of mediocre resources. The problem is me. Now I'm okay. I reintegrated well, but it's it's tough, and it really doesn't hit you in the face until you separate. So because it was easy when I was still in the Army, even though it had been 8 years since my last combat deployment at the time of retirement, there were still people around me that had similar experiences, so we could talk and share. And I think that's really the key to dealing with those things, right? They're not crazy, they're not bad, they're not broken. Their life experience is just so different from everybody else's that they don't fit, they're a round peg trying to get in a square hole. So that's kind of how I look at it. So that was a loss there. And I reached out once and tried to work with a therapist, but it just really didn't work. So I found some other things to do. I put down my workout regimen for a while. That was a mistake, so that has to be part of the routine. That really helps. I picked up some meditation practice and a bit of a yoga practice, and those kind of things kind of help keep me balanced and centered. The family, we talk about that kind of stuff pretty openly. It's not a secret. 2 of my 3 children went on to serve. So I have one. She just finished 5 years in the Marine Corps. Wow. And then I have my son is in his 4th year with the Coast Guard, and I feel pretty sure that he'll stay and be a career Coast Guardsman. So we do talk about those things, and that's really the key, is to just let everybody know that I'm not crazy, I'm not broken, I'm just different than you, and kind of help reel me in sometimes.
Yeah. Do you feel like there are people who come back and either don't want the help or just don't have the environment that would allow them to find?
I think there's people that come back. It's something they don't want the help. They don't know how to take the help. And what we'll find is in most, well, I shouldn't say that. I know that it's a prevalent experience to have childhood trauma attached to the unsolvable PTSD crisis post combat experiences. Over and over and over again. And that's one of the questions I'll ask you right off the get-go. Did anything happen to you when you were a young man? And that kind of clues them in. And what I've read, what I've heard, that seems to be a pattern.
Yeah. If somebody was coming from serving or somebody that knows they have a deployment coming up, is there anything that you would say to them as like a proactive measure that could be helpful, or some advice?
Well, just understand that you will never be like the rest of the world again. I mean, if you look at the numbers, this is kind of a tangent, but it'll make sense in a second.
Yeah.
So, and these are rough numbers, but they're pretty close. Only 1% of our population of our country serves in the armed forces. That's reserve component and active duty component. So it's less than 1%.
1%.
Less than 1. It's like 0.8%, something like that. That number is falling now too, which is another issue.
Yeah.
4% of our living population has served. And that, again, that's a rough figure, but somewhere around 4% are our veteran population. And then only 7% of our population has firsthand experience with someone who has served. So it's really, right, maybe 89% of our population has firsthand knowledge of what's going on. So I always caution people to, when like the 16 men that I took to Sadr City, Iraq, I knew that we only want a third of you to stay in the service. That's kind of how the model works. So we know that 2/3 of us are going to separate. And as these guys would make up their mind to leave, I just would tell them, I said, listen, there's nothing wrong with you, but you can't go back home. You're never going to be the Kyle you were when you were 18 years old and came to the party and did these things with us. You're not broken. You're not crazy, but you're different than everybody else. So that's kind of my big word of advice to people is just kind of accept who you'll become, accept what help is out there. Don't be afraid to share your stories. Don't be afraid to talk about the things that wake you up at night, things that scare you. And, there's some things like most people when they return are going to have some crowd anxiety. That's normal. Everybody has it. So, just be prepared for some of those things. And if those other things pop up or it doesn't go away, it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah. And I know you're talking about, the 7% that have firsthand dealt with it. We know that a sacrifice is not just on the soldier that is the greatest, but we know that the family sacrifice as well. Is there something that you could share now that you're a father of children who are serving or have served? Is there something that you would be able to share with maybe how to support your loved ones that are serving?
So the impact on the family is significant. Let me talk to that for a second. My kids were raised in the Army. They don't remember when Dad was. I think my youngest was 2 when I went back in the service, so my oldest would have been 6 then. So she remembers life without the Army, but not much. The other 2 have no recollection of Dad not being a soldier. And they've lived all over the world, and that's one of the things we talk about. They've had at 18 years old, these kids have had a rich life. They've lived in Alaska. They've gone dog sledding. They've gone dip netting salmon. They've seen a whale fishing around the boat that we were catching fish out of. My son has a picture of he's standing under the Mona Lisa because he was having a meltdown because he was 4 and trying to see the Louvre. They've been to Christmas Mass at the Vatican. They, got stranded in Rota, Spain for a week. So they've met all of these magnificent giants that I walked with throughout the course of their lives. They've had this wonderful, rich, deep experience. And they'll often say, Dad, we don't want to move our kids anywhere anymore. But I would say to people, you can't have it both ways. You can't have that. Both are good. Like sometimes I wonder, I'll see houses where the whole family's there having dinner on Sunday, and I kind of know what's going on there, but I don't know that. And I always wonder what that must be like. But at the same time, those people in that house that have lived in the same place for 2 generations, 50 years, and, that's what they know, they also don't have the same experiences that we were able to have as a family. So that's one of the things I tell people is you're not cheating your children. You're not cheating your spouse. You guys are going to have a very different, but a very rich life that, most people dream about.
Of course.
While you're serving, right now, I wouldn't say that we're in a peacetime situation. We're waiting for the balloon to go up again somewhere. But for the most part, we're a military of preparation, not a military of execution right now. Okay. And we're close enough to the last bang that, all the young men and some of the young women want to go to the show. And I think that's very difficult to deal with because you'll often feel less than, well, you've done these things, I must be less than you. Well, buddy, once upon a time, I had never done those things either, So just understanding who you are, what you contribute, be proud of your service, no matter how that service winds up. You know, I wouldn't trade how my term of service, except for that I want that Afghanistan deployment back. I never got to go fight there. But you know, that your experience is yours. Be proud of it, and you know, and get what you can out of that, because your country will ask a lot of you, but they will also give you a lot in return, both in terms of experience and benefits.
Okay, I love that. Now, you probably did not see yourself still teaching junior ROTC in the schools as you were going through your service career. What is something that you wish you would have known before you got into the classroom?
Oh, I don't know that anything could have prepared me for that. So my famous remark when people say, how did you get into this? Or how does this go? And I would say, well, you know, I had just finished a career where I worked with primarily 18 to 22-year-olds. So I thought to myself, 18 to 22, 14 to 18, how different could it be?
Oh.
Quite a bit.
Yes.
You know, and I don't know that you get to know that. I don't even know that teachers get to know that. You know, you go to that, you have that transformative experience in college, you student teach for a little bit, but you really haven't been, the kids haven't been let loose on you yet.
Right.
So it's been wild.
That is, but they keep you young, right?
I think so. I do. I think those things do keep us young, especially mentally young. You know, we get into, that's what I miss about the military is if you don't like your job, just wait a year. It's going to change. I mean, you never, every year to 18 months, you got a new job, and every 3 years-ish, you got sent somewhere else to do something completely different.
Real.
And what I see a lot of teachers do is they do the same thing every year for 30 years. And I'm not built that way. I couldn't do that. So JROTC is a little bit more dynamic, a little more flexible, and I spend a lot of time with the kids. And they do keep you young, you know, and that's one of the things I worry about is I want to know my name for the rest of the time that I'm here. So I think that using my brain socially and academically and being challenged by them and learning the new things is good for me.
Absolutely. Now, I think that there are probably a lot of myths that go along with an ROTC program, period, whether it's the junior version in a high school or college aged program. What is one of the biggest myths that you feel like people probably associate with a program like this?
They are recruiting all the children to go into the military.
Is that not true?
It is absolutely not true.
It is what you hear, right?
Most of my kids don't even qualify to serve. So that's not even the point of the program. So there's a big difference between senior ROTC and junior ROTC. Senior ROTC, the mission is to commission X number of second lieutenants into the service every year. So it is a recruiting and training for military service program. JROTC's mission is to make better citizens. That's really, we're about leadership and making good citizens. So in that regard, if a young person comes to me and says they're thinking about it, my recommendation is let's talk to all the recruiters. I'll facilitate that. And if they choose to do that, I will coach and mentor. And there are some that I may have made that recommendation to, either enlist or go into an RTC program in college. But we're really only talking about 3 or 4% of my cadets there. Most of the cadets, I would tell you the experience at East Hamilton was the high school is not much different socially than when we were all there. You've got your cliques, you know, and you got, I call them the pretty girls, you got the jocks, and you got the all the little cliques left me, but every Breakfast Club member is represented in some clique somewhere. That was a movie, kids, watch it. So JROTC allowed about 100 kids in the school to have something to identify with. Okay. They didn't fit in those other organizations, and they were just sort of meandering around. I think that was really where we started, and that's been the biggest benefit is they belong to something now, and it's theirs. And we're student-led, which is more unique than I thought. So really the 3 instructors are there just to keep it between the ditches. We do give them some specific guidance on some things, but we use a military model because we're all institutionalized and that's all we can think of. Yeah. So, we do have we have four classes of regular cadets, and we call those companies. Mm-hmm. We have a staff that manages those 4 companies led by a battalion commander who's in a different class. So, we say these are the things that have to happen, and we often just sit back and watch them figure it out. So it's good discovery learning. It's great management experience. It's great leadership experience. It's good organizational experience. I wish I had known about it. I would have steered some of my children into it, and I probably would have participated when I was young too.
Yeah, because you think it's only for people who have that military mindset that is what they want to do.
Right.
But you think of a lot of students in high school have no idea what they want to do, but how neat that it is more geared toward creating good people who are going to be good humans as they leave good citizens. I guess, how did the program, so you started this, was that a lot of work to get that up and going here at the high school level?
Oh boy.
Oh, boy.
So I was hired to teach at Soddy Daisy High School.
Okay.
The senior instructor was tagged to move to East Hamilton to start the program, and he called me and wanted to know if I would go with him, and I did, because we're friends, but love the devil you know, or go with the devil you know. That's what I meant to say. So I went out there to do that with him, and we actually have one of the oldest JROTC programs in the country here at Central High School. But most of these programs have been started more than 30 years ago. So when we said, how did you guys do this? There's not an answer to the question.
Really?
And the school didn't really understand what we were about. So they kind of saw us as a reform program. So the kids they gave us to start with, it was exciting. And we were new, so we had a lot of freshmen, but it was really funny. So you would think these two guys that had been career soldiers would have no issues with kids, but they put 85 high school students, of which I think 60 some odd of them were freshmen. And of those freshmen, over half were on some kind of IEP for behavior.
Wow.
And it was the last period of the day, and they were out of their minds. And Eric and I would lay in our offices next to each other and say, "You coming back tomorrow?" Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. But once we educated and the administration at East Hamilton has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Once we were able to get them educated on what our capabilities were, what our aim was, the counseling department helps us find the right kids. And we do there are some kids that they just need a male role model. They need some strong discipline. We're there for them. But that can't be our total focus, because I don't got that kind of gas in the tank.
Right.
And then, of course, there's $0 in your budget to start with. And we had to build an obstacle course, and we have travel teams for drill and ceremony. We have a Raider team, which is kind of like Spartan racing for high school kids wearing Army-ish uniforms. So there's a couple things, teams we had to figure out funding for, and it was high adventure the first year. And then the second year, I kind of knew what I was doing. We'd kind of got things sorted out, and then we were able to grow to, I think we had 165-ish cadets the second year.
Wow.
So we hired a third instructor, and that's been immensely helpful. And so we're going to come into our first cadets will be seniors next year.
Oh, how amazing.
It's going to be an emotional graduation. Yeah, because I've taught those kids intimately for 4 years. It'll be, I'm not looking forward to May.
I bet, but how neat. Now, I know, so beginning 80 some odd kids, now 160. How many do you anticipate this year?
I anticipate us starting off just right around 200.
Okay.
I think we'll finish the year. We always have some loss in the beginning of the year, so I expect us to finish around 180.
Okay. So you've got your 3 officers that are helping to run this. Is everyone in there together, or is it smaller classes?
No, it's smaller classes. So we'll run. They generally let us have first period planning, which is very helpful. And then so we'll have second, third, fourth, and fifth periods. We'll have anywhere from 30 to 60 cadets in there, broken up by grade levels. So we have one person that teaches freshmen. He has the biggest classes. I did that one year. My heart goes out to him.
And there's a reason you're not doing it right now, right?
Yeah, so then my classes are smaller. I'll have, of my classes, probably 3 of them have 15 kids. One will have 25 or 30. My third class is always big. It's just the way the elective schedule works. And then we'll have even fewer. So we take our juniors and seniors, and they kind of in the same classroom. It's mostly a self-guided course at that point in time. And they're the leaders. They've got other things to do. So we break that down. And then our last period of the day is our, I'm not going to say most talented, but it's our staff. So they're the ones that are they're learning organizational management techniques. How do you lead people that you don't see all the time? So we do a lot of written communication with them, and we learn from them too. How can we disseminate this stuff digitally? I thought that the high school kids would be money at that. They're not. So we got to teach them how to use the computers, but they do have some good ideas, and they do understand how to use the mobile technology far better than we do. So that's kind of how it runs, and I'm excited to see what this year looks like.
I bet.
On a different note, so in our third year, last year, I took 2 of my Raider teams to the national event in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and they placed 4th overall.
That's amazing.
Which is really exceptional. I mean, I think there's 3,275 JROTC programs in the country, and there's different divisions, but out of those numbers, a 3-year-old program came out 4th in the country, which is pretty phenomenal.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there a general curriculum that y'all are able to feed into, or is that something y'all have to create?
Yeah, so we do have a required curriculum that we follow, and it's by each year. And it kind of, the first year is really it's exploratory about yourself. Who am I? What am I good at? What am I interested in?
Okay.
How do I set goals? How do I reach goals? We teach them, we have almost a quarter-long course on study habits, time management, things of that nature. And then when you get to my class, we're going to talk a lot about direct leadership. So how do I manage people that I can see? How do I supervise people? And getting them comfortable with the idea that most people want you to tell them what you expect of them. Give them some direction, tell them what to do. And then how do you start holding individual people accountable? And we revisit some of the things, strengths, weaknesses, goal setting. But each year we progress. And I also teach the government section. So our cadets will walk away. If you take us for 2 years, you'll have your elective credit, and then you'll get health credit and your PE credit. So we do teach those subjects combined there, and I think that we have the best physical education program, hands down.
Yeah.
And then if you take us for 3 years, you'll also get your government and personal finance credits.
Wow. I was about to say, who knew that all this was in it? Probably very few people, unless they've been a part of your program.
It is, and that's one of the things when I talk about the amount of people that have experience with the military. If 89% of us really don't have any idea who those 3 weirdos are in the back of the building, then they don't ask questions. They kind of so the word doesn't really get out, and that's troublesome. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sure you've heard the recruiting crisis we're having right now. We just can't fill the ranks. And it's because the all-volunteer force was wonderful. We don't have a conscript army. Yeah. But what it's done is it's become a family business. So it's not, it's very incestuous, for lack of a better term, that family tree is getting too straight, and we're becoming more and more isolated, and the country's becoming more and more distant from what does it really mean.
Yeah, man. Do you have a lot of conversations with parents as to what this could potentially look like for your student if they wanted to pursue?
We have as many as we can. So we're always willing to participate, and our counselors are good at tying us in for especially freshman orientation stuff. And we have some parents that will ask questions, and that's good. But outside of that, I don't know what the vehicle is to say, hey, have you thought about this?
Do you think that there are a lot of parents that maybe are scared for their children to be put in a situation like that, kind of the inevitability of what could potentially happen, that they would not be open to a conversation?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think that it's kind of ironic if every piece of data you have says the world is safer today than it's ever been in the history of mankind. It's the best time ever to be a human being. But I think if you look at a different set of data, you'll find that people are more afraid now than they've ever been forever. And there's a multitude of reasons for that, but I don't know how to solve that problem. I don't know that I'll be able to solve it for them, but the kids do the best job of selling it. So what we do, what happens a lot is, little Annie brings Bobby Sue and to talk to us, and that sometimes will generate a phone call or a meeting with a parent going, hey, what's this all about? And usually out of those conversations, it becomes that good. Some people are very closed-minded. I've had some people, my kid's not going to do this. I'm like, the counseling office is right there, man.
Right.
It's not personal.
Right.
So yeah, if you're not open to the conversation, you're not open to the conversation.
Yeah. Is this something what you're doing with these students and kind of seeing them grow and meet individual goals? Is this something that you anticipate doing for a while?
I don't know. So one of the reasons why we started our travel agency is my wife is 10 years older than me. And I have a great compensation package from Hamilton County. I've got my Army pension. I've got some other benefits out there. But if I worked this job for another, 14 more years to age 67 and then retired, I'll be 67. My wife will be 77. I don't know what that looks like. So we've always enjoyed traveling. We have a great time on the trips. And this is kind of one of the reasons why we got into the travel business is it's allowing us to travel right now 4 to 6 times a year.
Oh, wow.
And fulfill some of those bucket list trips we want to do while I can continue to earn during these peak income years. So I don't know how much longer I will teach. I can tell everybody it won't be less than 2 more years. I'm committed to finishing these next 2 years, and then we'll see. We'll see where we go. But I will have to find something with young people. I've always worked with young people. I was a scout leader for, I guess, the better part of a decade when my son was growing up. I did it for a few years after he graduated and left Scouts. And then we've got this. So I do enjoy that. That's important to me. So I like working with the kids. I think it's impactful and it makes me happy. So I'll always have to find something to do.
Absolutely. And they need that. They need mentors in a different level. I feel like there are so many broken homes today, and they need someone who has experienced things that are different and who can step in to help show guidance. And I love that that's what a lot of your program is doing.
Well, there's that part, but also they need experiences. And that is, I think, the most valuable thing that we facilitate for them is these experiences. If you go to many other countries, like Afghanistan's the joke, is this guy's never been out of this valley from the time they were born and die and never leave that valley. There's a lot of people like that here.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I think that's the more of the world that you can experience, the better off you'll be. You'll just have a broader, you can see that there's more than one way to do things. You can see that, it's really not that scary. It's a wonderful, rich world out there. And, so if I can provide opportunities for kids to travel, many kids have never been away from home, and the first thing they'll go is on an overnight trip with me to a competition. So we do my Raider team will travel 6 to 8 times a year, depending on how well they do, which gets them involved with kids from all over the world. We have kids that come from Germany to these competitions. They're not German, they're American military kids. But they're sharing these experiences and these different walks of life with each other, which is great pollination. Our drill team does the same. Our rifle team was a new program last year, marksmanship team. Okay. I expect to see that of them. Our academic team has done very well. They haven't qualified for the Washington, D.C. trip yet, but I think this is going to be the year.
You think so?
So they'll do those. But taking those trips, doing those things, we take them to, last year, their service project was to do some work at the Chickamauga National Battlefield. But in conjunction with that, we had the military history professor from UTC come and give a class, prepping them for the visit, and then the ranger walked them through some things, which is to see the battlefield's cool, but to actually have some academic information prior to, and then get to look at it and put that into context. It helps you understand decision making. It helps you understand what this really looked like, and it kind of gives a broader perspective to what that war was, which was so impactful in our country's development. So we have big social events. They plan and go to a formal ball, the military ball, which they say is better than prom.
Oh, I bet.
We have a formal sit-down dinner with, there's got some of the military ritual in it, and then they have a dance party afterwards.
That's great.
So it's, we do provide experiences that they can't get in your normal high school track. Right. And take the curriculum out, take the other things out, those experiences will impact their lives more and more positively than anything else we do.
Because you need those. You need those to be able to also give direction and help utilize. I think that's amazing that it is in those competitions that they are meeting people and that are from different places that also allow them to, right? All of these events shape us as people. And so the fact that you get to facilitate those, that has to feel pretty good. Very rewarding, right?
It is. And that's what I miss the most with my service. And this has replaced that, was the reward you get watching someone achieve something. It's like now I don't have this ever happen, but Private First Class Vassar, who was my gunner when I first got to Alaska, is now a first sergeant in the Army, which was the rank that I left at, So,
wow.
How did that happen? It's not anything, one thing that I did there, but it's just nice to have seen those young men and women that have achieved things beyond what you did.
Right.
That is the most rewarding thing in life, I think. And we like to watch our children grow and do better than us. I've got thousands of children.
I love that. Now, I know that y'all were able to travel when you were stationed and in service. Now, I know you've talked about both Europe as well as Alaska. What is your favorite place outside of the U.S.?
I have always loved Central and South America. So when I was a young man in the Navy, we spent a lot of time there with the counter narcotics work. There was a training deployment we did working with the South American navies. And I always loved that part of the world. I love the Latino culture. The food's fantastic. It's pretty. It was just that's my, and I haven't really been able to get back as much as I want to. Those are some of my bucket list trips, is to go back there. I want to show my wife hasn't been in the part of the country, so I want to take her and show her the Panama City, Panama was my favorite place in the world. And it's quite a bit different now, but I want to show her some of these things. And I called you from this place, and that's always fun to do. So that's been my lifelong favorite place.
That's awesome.
But you can't beat the United States of America. It's a great place to travel. When we would PCS, when we moved, I had an RV that we would use the RV, and that's how we kind of you have to be creative when you're poor. So we're not poor. Military people are fairly compensated, but I like to make that joke. So we would take 6 weeks. We had travel time and vague leave time, and we would take about 6 weeks on these moves, and would drive the RV and try to hit all the national parks between us and our destination. Or like our trip from Alaska to New York was via Florida. Go figure that one out.
That is bizarre.
So, we wanted to go see Grandma. So we made the trip. It was the summer of love. We visited everybody in the family. We tried to visit that on that trip. And the trip to Alaska, we hit as many national parks as we could, and other moves and things. We did the same. So, I love our national park system. I never get tired of visiting those.
Absolutely. And I've heard, especially if you are driving in an RV, the best way to see, because you are able to set up camp and do that. Now, the cruise, right? And cruise planers, all of that you're able to do. Do y'all prefer to set people up on their own trip, or do you prefer to do group trips where y'all can kind of tour guide and go together?
So we think, we like people. So we're both people. Our favorite, we like cruising. Our favorite part of the cruising is eating in the main dining room, and we'll make them sit, just the two of us. We like to get seated with people we've never met before and develop a friendship over a week. So what we're working toward, and I'm working our first two of those right now, is 6 to 10 times a year I want to take a small group and host that trip. So not as the tour operator, but just as a co-traveler and a host of the trip.
That's awesome.
And we'll be doing that in Greece next summer for 10 days. So we're going to take 24 people mostly from Southeast Tennessee, the Chattanooga area, and go do 10 days in Greece. And I used two other vendors for that. Europe Express put together our land portion in Athens, and then we're going to do Virgin Voyages for the Greek Islands cruise.
That's fantastic. Now, are all cruise ships and lines the same or pretty comparable? Or?
Oh, no.
No? Okay,
No, it's
tell
wild.
me.
It's wildly different. So there's 3 basic classes of cruise lines.
Okay.
You've got what we call a contemporary class. That's going to include the names everybody knows: Carnival, Royal Caribbean. MSC is a new player, but we should know their name.
Okay.
Costa, we don't hear much of that here, but that's another contemporary. I'm sure I'm leaving. Norwegian kind of fits in that. But they're all very different. They're very, very different. There's a client that's specific for Carnival, and that client doesn't have a good time on Royal Caribbean and vice versa. So they're all little different flavors. And then you got their premium class, and that's Celebrity, Princess, Virgin, Holland America, and Disney kind of fits into that range too. And then you get into your luxury slips. And then that's Azamara, Oceania, Seven Seas, and that may be trending toward ultra luxury, but it also looks at how many people you've got. So on your contemporary classes, those are your big ships. Royal Caribbean's the one that puts the 7,000 people ships out on the water. It's really not as crowded as it seems, but they've got those big monster ships. Most of them are around 5,000. Premium class ships, that's kind of what I like, about 2,500. Virgin's my current love affair. So about 2,700 on their ships, and that's a good size ship. They've got enough variety of programs to do without it being overcrowded for me. Okay. And then you can get into the ultra luxury or expedition cruises where you've got less than 100 or certainly less than 1,000 people on those ships. And that's a whole different experience. You know, it's smaller, there's no crowds, but the staff knows you. On some of those cruises, like if you took an Antarctic expeditionary cruise, they've got a file on you that they've learned. So when you walk on board, you're greeted by name. They know what you like. They know what you don't like. So, you know, it just depends on, it depends on your pocketbook, and it depends on what your preference are. You know, I don't like that kind of attention. So I'm probably never going to be an ultra luxury cruiser kind of guy. But I also don't like to be too anonymous. I like my server to know who I am. I like having a sommelier in the dining room. So I kind of, it just depends on where you fit. You know, I kind of fit in the premium lines.
Okay.
But they're all very, very different. They're wildly different.
I've heard excellent reviews on cruises. There's a lot of people that say, you know, once you've gone, that's going to be your favorite vacation. I'm still stuck on the Titanic, and I'm still nervous that, like, I'm going to get out in the middle of shark-infested waters and something's going to happen. And it makes me nervous. So
the data says otherwise.
I know. Oh. Yeah.
Bad things can always happen. But again, it's very, very safe. I get that. Only about 20% of people have been on a cruise. Of those 20%, 71% only consider cruising for their next vacation.
Really? Which says a lot, right?
It does. I think it's the best vacation value out there because if you think about it, I've got a family I'm working with to do they have done an annual family vacation every year, which has usually been a big Airbnb, one of those, 12-bedroom homes on the beach. But that's gotten so expensive that they were looking for something different. And you got to compare all the apples to all the oranges. So when if every family, if 9 families paid $3,500 a piece, they haven't bought one stick of groceries yet. So what's that going to cost you? I know to feed my family on vacation, it's probably going to cost me another $1,000 to $1,500.
Of course.
And then the other, there's no program. So how are we going to entertain ourselves? What tours are you going to do? Those kind of things aren't programmed into that. So if you look at a cruise, and why I think it's such a good value, is all you have to do is get to the ship, and that's it. Everything is taken care of. So, you've probably, if you're an alcohol drinker, you've pre-purchased that package. So you don't have to worry about that. You know where you're going to eat, and you've got a variety of places to eat on the ship. You've got a variety of entertainment. And you only have to unpack once, and they'll take you to several different destinations. So that's, this is our current, it's relatively new for my wife and I. We've only been cruising for a couple of years, but this is the great, I've been on her for 20 years. It's kind of a funny story. Our first cruise was on a Royal Caribbean ship, and for literally 20 years, I was like, we need to go on a cruise. And she didn't want to go on a cruise because she didn't want to be out in the middle of the ocean and have something bad happen, right?
Kindred spirit.
What's it going to be like? Well, everybody's going to get sick. And I was like, okay, whatever. So she finally said, I'll go. And I went, boom. So I booked us a 4-night cruise out of out of Miami on the Freedom of the Seas. It's a smaller Royal Caribbean ship, and we only went to Nassau. And she was in she had just had knee surgery and thought she could do it on crutches. So we had to rent a wheelchair on the ship, which is a different funny story. We'll leave that alone. Anyway, so we get there, and I wanted to jazz it up. So I had a bottle of champagne and some chocolate-covered strawberries in the room. We checked in. We ate the strawberries, and I did not know that she could not drink champagne. She drank a glass of champagne, probably took a 3-hour nap. Don't worry, I finished that bottle of champagne on the balcony. And when she woke up, we were already out. We were out of the channel. We were in the ocean. And she said, "This is wonderful. We should do it again." And I did not throw her in the water. But I'm not saying I didn't think about it. So we kind of fell in love with that particular mode of travel. And we're excited to kind of get back to doing some more enriching travel next summer in Greece and do some tours and get into the culture a little bit. But raising the kids in the Army, we would go to the library, check out the travel books. We would go online and look at the Viator tours, and I would just recreate those tours with my books and my maps. So every trip was about, we're going to teach the kids something. And then when I retired, I retired at the time the kids all left home. So we started doing what I call leisure travel, which involves sitting on a beach and calling for pina coladas. And which doesn't suck, it was we kind of like it.
Can't imagine it would.
I've enjoyed that, but it's kind of time to get back into discovering some new things, and so I like to do both of those things.
That's awesome. Now, for somebody who is interested in what y'all, whether it's going on the group excursion to Greece and the Shining Islands next year, or setting up something on their own, how would they reach out to you?
Well, the best way to do that is go to our website, tnttravel.net, and you can contact us through that link there. If you want, I'm going to say it out loud. My cell phone number is 907-371-9472. I'm always happy to talk to people. I've got a process, and I think I take a different approach to this. So our first meeting, even though you're calling me interested in Greece, I still want to sit down with you, have a cup of coffee, have a cocktail, beer, or glass of water, whatever works for you, and kind of ask you some questions and see what's really right for you. The Greece trip may be right for you, but it's an adults-only trip. So if you've got 4 kids you want to take to Greece, that's not the right trip for you. So we want to sort that kind of stuff out first. And I apply that to everything. You've watched me develop the business over the last 6 months, and we're only a year old now. But I've tried to do it both ways. I've tried to do quick things on the phone, and I convert very few of those to successful trips for people. But I'm finding that my satisfaction rate is high when I start with that initial 30-minute, interview consultation, and then I'll present you with a couple of options just to kind of see where you work. Because we always, I'm going to ask you what your dream is. Well, we haven't had the other conversation yet, which is what's your budget, both time and money. Of course. So I'll hear your dream, I'll present you the dream, and I've got some clues as to where your budget is. So I generally don't make you go, I'll never be able to do anything like that. Right. But then I'll give you some options, and then we can just kind of refine it from there. So when you work with cruise planners, you work with TNT Travel, we are going to, even though it may not look like a customized trip, that trip is selected just for you based on what you're looking for. But again, tnttravel.net or 907-371-9472. You should be able to call that number after 4:30 today. I donated my phone to a truck stop, and it's currently in Lexington, Kentucky. But its replacement's coming in the mail when I get home. Thankfully. So don't call before.
That is awesome. And I'm sure most people are hearing this and really appreciate the approach that you're taking, kind of the white glove service, even at the beginning, because I'm sure there are people that have this idea of what they like, but maybe they saw it, or maybe it's ingrained, but not really truly what would be the satisfaction rate for their entire family, right?
Right.
So I think that's an awesome approach.
And that kind of happened this morning. I was doing a consultation with somebody, and we had really talked about cruise. And in the course of the conversation, almost simultaneously, both looked at it, so not cruise. Yeah. Because they wanted to go somewhere secluded. They didn't want to be around a bunch of people. they wanted to. So I was like, well, so we're talking about a trip to the mountains here, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Something completely different.
But that's why we do that, just because you got it on your mind. And then there's a vacation for everybody. I don't consider budget when we start the process. I'm usually surprised to find out where we land on those kind of things, because I don't want to make assumptions that cheat you out of what you might stretch to do, or, kind of get you out of your comfort zone a little bit to have that experience that you seek.
I think that's awesome. And y'all, I cannot say enough good things. Whenever I get over my fear of being in shark-infested waters with a bunch of people in the middle of the water, I will let you know, and we'll plan a cruise. But until then, we can plan some other fun trips.
We can.
Yeah.
We can.
Now, how are you completely full for the group of 24 that you're taking to Greece, or are there still...
There's available space.
Okay. So yeah, definitely if y'all are interested in that trip coming up next year, 2025 to Greece, definitely also reach out and hear about that trip coming. Todd, thank you so much for allowing us to kind of dive into not only your background, but all of the ways that you are helping to serve the community.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to see how this turns out.
Absolutely. And it would not be the traditional closing of Heather's Most Precious if I did not ask, what do you find most precious?
I think our young people are our most precious thing. And I believe that, somebody's going to have to pay my Social Security one day. I think it's my responsibility to develop and give them the most opportunities that they can have to be, and I live in America, to be solid American citizens, to get as much as our country and our world has to offer, but also give back enough through my example to make sure the next generation kind of has it. So the kids are the most precious thing.
I would agree. They are, most of them. No, I'm just kidding. I would agree. They are, for sure. Well, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you have learned a lot. Definitely reach out to TNT. And I almost said cruise planners, but it's just TNT Travel planners.
You'll see cruise planners over the website. TNT Travel was my LLC prior to buying the franchise. Okay. But everything is labeled cruise planners, but the website is tnttravel.net.
Okay, so you can type in any of it, Google any of it. But y'all, I hope that y'all have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And as always, I hope you will choose to be kind, choose to be grateful, and choose to encourage. We'll see you back next week for another episode of Heather's Most Precious. Bye, y'all.
Heather's Most Precious is brought to you with love by the Hendrickson Agency, an insurance agency serving all of Georgia and Tennessee. The Hendrickson Agency, properly protecting your most precious possessions. Support for Heather's Most Precious is provided by Study.com, which offers SAT and ACT study materials and even has resources for AP and college credit courses. Listeners of Heather's Most Precious get 30% off their first 3 months of any subscription level with offer code PRECIOUS. Just go to Study.com and use offer code PRECIOUS at checkout. Heather's Most Precious is produced by Chattanooga Podcast Studios and is part of the Podnooga Network. Find out more at ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of Heather's Most Precious.